Welcome to the Embellish Podcast, where we like to talk about stories. We like to explore how embellishment makes a story better, how it allows us to connect more deeply with both the person telling the story and the subject of the story. Together we will explore people, products, and places that have a story to tell. We'll navigate through the truths, half-truths, and outright lies and decide if the truthiness even matters. Good evening. Thanks for joining me if you're here tonight. If you didn't catch the thumbnail, tonight we're going to be talking about a holiday gift guide. We're getting real close to the time of the year when you're going to be looking for presents for people in your life, or people are going to be asking you for ideas on presents. And inevitably, you become the whiskey person. People ask you, what should I buy for the whiskey lover in my life? Man, this arm is killing me. Hold on a second. I bought this really nice boom arm. It's a significant upgrade from the $18 Amazon version one I have, but my microphone's not heavy enough for it, so it wants to constantly run up on my face. And you guys can't see it, because there's not enough contrasting color between my shirt and the actual microphone, but it's just see, it lives right here in front of my face. But before we get started, we'll just run through a few things. It's been a weird week, just trying to get through a few things. Did come across a bit of encouraging information. A few episodes back, we talked about American single malt whiskeys and what they mean for the American whiskey marketplace, and all of those wonderful things. But I came across an article, and it looks like the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, for those of you that are into bourbon, the TTB, that's where all the labeling comes from, is likely to take up in the month of December, a specific definition for American single malt whiskeys. And I won't lie, I heard it on a podcast. I think it was Distillers Talk with Alan Bishop in that group. But I kind of started poking around to try to find the details on it. And it sounds like what the TTB is supposed to be taking up is what the American Single Malt Whiskey Commission had put forward. And if that's the case, then that's super encouraging, because we're going to get some regulations. And I know, regulations aren't always our friends, but being able to regulate the industry, make sure that what you're getting is what you're supposed to be getting. So that's super awesome. One of the more brighter shining moments. Matt Porter over at ADHD Whiskey was doing a flight night, UFC flight night. What is it? Ultimate Flighting Championship. I'm not exactly sure what he's calling it, but he made a mention that he has actually been listening to this podcast. So that was super encouraging. That we're at the point now where 100% of the world's top whiskey tasters have listened to this podcast and are encouraging us to move forward with it. Super excited about that. And Matt will be at the Repeal Day Expo with Jack from the Hood Sommelier Instagram and Monday Night Sucks. You can still get some tickets to that. I think the VIP tickets may be gone. It's the first weekend in December. Fred Minnick is hosting that. So it's a great opportunity to get into a virtual world and be a part of Whiskey Expo. It doesn't require you to leave your home. We're all interested in getting back to in-person events, because those are absolutely the lifeblood of whiskey. But in lieu of that, this is a pretty solid replacement. I attended it last year, had a great time. Encourage you to do the same thing. In the vein of Monday Night Sucks, if you didn't catch it, this last Monday, when they went into the Afterglow, Tim invited me to join him, and we stayed on for an hour and a half. It was a fantastic time. I stayed up way too late, drank way too much whiskey, but had a really good series of conversations. If you don't already watch that on Monday nights, stop by. There's always something interesting going on. It was a super fun time for me. I saw several of you guys float through. So that'll probably cover everything we've got. That'll give us, 5-6 minutes worth of just random rambling. What put me in this this situation of wanting to talk about what kind of gifts, should folks be getting, is that, when people find out you're into whiskey, they'll end up buying you a couple of gifts that you're probably going to have way more than you ever need of. You're going to have a bar set. It's going to be a cocktail shaker glass, a strainer, a spoon, and a jigger, all of those wonderful things, which I don't think you can ever have too many of those. But then there's also going to be whiskey stones. They're going to be different shapes or sizes. There's going to be ice molds. Those things are going to be pretty standard. And I started poking around. I was like, what kind of whiskey gift lists exist out there? And most of them sort of suck. There's different lists of bottles, but some of them are, real unrealistic. There's lists of gifts and gadgets, and they're really, super trendy. So I'll back up and say, never give whiskey stones, because odds are if the person you're trying to give it to, they already have some whiskey stones. They already have some way of cooling their whiskey, if they even want to do that. And you're making a pretty broad assumption there as well. And we won't talk about whiskey specifically. That'll be a little bit later on in this. But we're going to run through some gifts that aren't whiskey. Whiskey stones is where we started. Nosing kits. Those are things that I think that, depending upon where your price range happens to be, they're a great gift depending upon how serious your friend is about whiskey. And you can ask a few questions to sort of assess, are they into it? Ask them if they drink their whiskey neat. And if they drink their whiskey neat, then they're probably nosing. And if they're probably nosing it, whether they've been doing it for a long time or doing it a short period of time, these kits are pretty valuable. I don't have one myself. It's something that I would like to have. But there's a lot of different options that are out there. Some of them that I've been, interested in looking at personally, things that I have bookmarked for purchase myself. There's knowsYourBourbon.com. KnowsYourBourbon.com has several different options. Some of them are low cost. They've got different kits with different flavors, different ideas for you to sort of explore. And they come in a pretty neat little package. From what I can tell, they're widely accepted as a good product. One of the other ones that I think has been on my radar, and it is significantly more expensive, but Bourbon Real Talk does an American whiskey aroma kit. And I've been eyeballing that one for a long time because there's some pretty unique smells in there. And, if you've ever followed that particular podcast or YouTube channel, the creator of this whiskey aroma kit, the whole idea of Bourbon Real Talk is that they don't do Patreons, they don't do any type of sponsorships for their channel. They make all their money off of any type of merchandise that they happen to sell. And I have a couple of their boxes that they use for storing Boston rounds, the little sample bottles that you eventually end up with a whole bunch of them. And personally, what I've started doing is I've started a whiskey library. And so maybe this is one that I don't actually have on this list, but on that website they've got a box that'll contain either 1 ounce or 2 ounce Boston rounds. And for every bottle that I'm about to kill, I usually try to save back 1 or 2 ounces of it, put a label on it, and stick it inside the box. And so I have those in perpetuity. And at some point in time, and I have, 50, 60, 70, 80 samples, or 25 years from now, I have some things that I can revisit without trying to bunker tons and tons of bottles that, are going to have some degree of nostalgia for me. I have a couple ounces of it, and that ought to be enough, over life. If you've got a couple hundred bottles, you're taking a couple hundred samples, and as you burn those bottles down, you buy new things to try out. You can kind of keep those on hand. And also, a couple ounces enough that you can probably sample off of it 4 times through the course of having that. And I'm going to make a note here so I can put that back in the show notes. But they have, like I said, there is Glass Bottle Outlet, I think, is the retailer that I've bought from several times. Boston rounds are pretty inexpensive, so you can get some of those. Then you could run over to Bourbon Real Talk and pick up one of their boxes. And basically you've created an ability for whoever it is that you're buying to start their own whiskey catalog, their own whiskey back catalog to be able to hold on to. Let me write that down. And at the end of this, obviously, I'll put links in. This is going to be a super link heavy listing on this particular episode because I have a lot of things to go through. But they give you something. And so, like, especially being in the buckle of the Bible Belt, sometimes people are reluctant or they're not interested in going into a liquor store because it's just there's too much for them to think about there. And so this gives them the option of buying things that are not directly alcohol, but they are supporting somebody in their hobbies, in their interests, and whatever it is that they're after. And then another one on Amazon, there's an Aroma Academy kit. It's a whiskey aroma kit. Had some pretty good reviews. Like I said, I have not been able to personally utilize any of them. If I had to personally rank them, if I had the money to spend, I'm going to go with Bourbon Real Talk. If I'm looking for a smaller, and not to say that Nose Your Bourbon is cheaper, it is just a smaller. They offer smaller kits, whereas Bourbon Real Talk's American Whiskey Aroma Kit is pretty robust. The smaller sampling allows for a smaller price size on it. So those are three options, nosing your bourbon kits. If it's helping whoever it is expand their understanding of what they're smelling in the glass and what they're drinking on a regular basis. The next one is a whiskey tasting notebook. And that is super nerdy, absolutely super nerdy, but I will 100% recommend it. In the thumbnail, you'll see one that's propped up. I have one. It is from a retailer on Etsy. It's a Scroll and Ink leather-bound notebook. Scroll and Ink has, like I said, they have a website at scrollandink.com. All of their stuff is hand-bound, and I'm looking down at mine, actually, and they're pretty nice looking. They look like this. You can get whiskey or you can get bourbon stamped on it. On the inside, you can get a name. I've actually done, this lighting is going to be terrible, but I've actually done initials here for myself. And then on the inside, there's some really nice pages. They help you, kind of capture what it is. And these are relatively inexpensive. They're small, so they're portable enough. They've got a little place for a pen. So if you're the kind of person that's interested in buying writing materials, pick up one of these. Pick up a Fisher Space Pen. That's one of my favorites. And now you've got a complete kit that the person can take with them wherever they go. I've also bought a couple of pens from Refine, Refyne. They're these little metal pens that are about the size of a hand. The only downside is that I really like clicky pens, and so I'll end up playing with it a lot. And it's small enough that I end up stabbing myself in the hand with it, and I get ink spots all over myself. It's not a negative review, so to speak, but it is something to consider. But they're also small enough to go with this, because if you put a full-sized ink pen up against the notebook, maybe we'll use a Sharpie here. But if you put it up against the side of it, it takes up the whole thing, right? It's a pretty significant thing. Right now I have this silver Fisher Space Pen in here. I would recommend getting one of the flat black ones. I can't find mine, but that is quite possibly my favorite. They're pressurized ink cartridges, so they don't ever run low. They just run out. You can write upside down. They're fantastic ink pens, and they're easy to sort of put in your pocket. One that is really popular. Smoker kits, the ability to smoke your own cocktail. I would recommend you avoid those. You're going to find them in every single gift list that you come across. The reason I advise you to not do it is because most of them are bulky. They come with a big glass cloche. They come with a wooden base, and you sort of smoke these chips and you put your cocktail inside of it, and it takes a lot of preparation. Takes a lot of planning, takes a lot of effort to be able to smoke a cocktail. And is the person that you're giving this to actually interested in smoked cocktails? Maybe, maybe not. But if you're going to, I recommend, there's a company called Foghat, and it's a wooden inverted hat, I guess, if you were to think about it. If you're thinking about a flat brimmed cowboy style hat, it's inverted, and so there's a divot in it. It's got a little wire mesh strainer. You put your wood chips in it, you hit it, and since the drink underneath it is colder, it pulls some of the smoke into it and it holds it there. So now all you're trying to keep up with is the wood chips and this small fog hat. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's hit and miss over whether you're going to use that on a regular basis or not. So, if you want to give that a shot, that's a way to go about it. Once again, like I said, I'll put some links in. I don't have one. I do have a smoker kit. It is one of the big glass cloches. And a glass cloche is like just a big glass dome that you put over top of it. and I've never used it. I've had it for probably 6 months, and I've not used it once. I actually got it through Bespoke Post, which is another thing you could get somebody that's not specifically whiskey related, but a Bespoke Post gift card or subscription would work pretty well. The next bit, glassware, or at least drinkware, maybe is the right term, because not everything on the list is glassware. But I have a handful of things that I would absolutely recommend. And I would start with, if the person that you're looking to purchase for is a traveler and somebody who is on the road quite regularly, pick up one of these snoot glasses. I've got one of these, and I've got one of the nosers from Brewmate. I think Brewmate makes that. These snoot glasses are fantastic. I took them to the beach with us this summer. They're on the inside of them. There's 4 little, I don't know, wings, so to speak, and it helps to sort of stir up the whiskey when you're doing it. It's double walled, so the drink does not heat up or cool down based off of what's happening in the environment around it as nearly as much. It drinks about as close to a Glencairn as I can get personally. They nose well, and I'm not a great taster or noser, but they're about as close to drinking out of a legitimate whiskey glass as I can get. In something that I'm not worried about, number one, breaking, so I can put it in my suitcase whenever I travel, going through an airport. I don't have to be concerned with this getting broken. It drinks well. It cleans easily because it's stainless steel. It doesn't show a ton of fingerprints, and if I drop it on the ground while I'm drinking, it's not the end of the world. And there's no reason you would ever drop a glass whenever you're drinking. But that's the only one that is non-glass related. There's also this, and I'm not even going to know how to pronounce it, but it's a Cuisivin, Cuisivin Glendale whiskey nosing glass. And this is possibly one of my favorite glasses to drink out of. The reason I like it is it's got a stem, and so you can kind of keep your hands off of it and keep from heating up the whiskey while you're drinking, if you're that kind of a person. They're inexpensive. They've got a big enough nose. The thing that I don't care for on Glencairns is I think that the nose is too concentrated, at least for my nose. And these are just slightly bigger. They have just a little bit more space to them, and they're sort of nice looking. If I'm looking for an even lower cost option, and I've done a series of blind tastings for coworkers and friends, and so I have enough glassware that I can do a flight of 4 different whiskeys for 12 people, and so that's 4 times 12, which is I guess 40. I have 48, approximately 48 glasses as it sits, and they are these. They're similar. These are actually brandy. They're considered to be brandy tasting glasses. They're called Acopa Select 5.5 ounce brandy spirits glasses, and they're from the restaurant store. These are super dirt cheap, and they're easy enough to be able to nose out of. Like I said, the space in the top is virtually identical to that of the Cuisivin Glendale class. They hold a little bit less. They don't have quite as big of a bowl at the bottom for kind of air to interact with your whiskey, but they do stay up on a stem. They don't topple over nearly as much, and I've dropped a couple of these and they haven't broken. So they're pretty good, and they're really, really, really inexpensive. One of the for like a rocks type glass, there is nothing I think on the market right now that beats the aged in ore neat glasses. They look like this. They are all, from what I can tell, handmade, because I have 2 of them and I can see a slight variation in the curvature in the lip. And so usually that's indicative, of either bad manufacturing practices because the variances are significant, or some degree of being handmade. And based off of the quality of how they feel, I lean towards it being handmade. So all of those are relatively inexpensive or easy things to get. The last one I have is a little bit different. So there's a gentleman on Instagram. He goes by, I think it's Kornbluh hand blown glass. It's Kornbluh. He's on Instagram, and he does hand blown glass, and he makes these really nice Glencairn shaped bottles, but they're hand blown glass. And so there's a degree of design that is inside the bottom of these They're really, really nice. They're also relatively expensive, but they're really nice. And like I say, it would be a great present to give for somebody. If you're going to do that, you might want to get that order in sooner rather than later, because they're handmade, and so they're going to take a while to go. And I would assume, like, part of the reason I'm doing this early in November is that most of the things on here, you have enough time to get an order in and get them taken care of before Christmas actually rolls around, or before whatever holiday you happen to celebrate, I guess, rolls around. It could be any other number of religious or non-religious holidays that exist during this time of the season. I guess maybe I should start stealing the phrase from Who Gives a Dram is, holly jolly season. It doesn't matter what religion you are, you can just go with holly jolly. But yeah, I think that's it. There's a number of companies also that make infinity bottles. Those are fun purchases for somebody who's into whiskey. As they open up bottles, they can pour a couple ounces out of each. They can pour a couple ounces out of each bottle and put them into an infinity bottle. There's a couple apps out there for you to track, so you can know what the proof is going to be of whatever it is that you have. It's a good way to go. It's something that's sort of interesting to toss out there. And then the last non-whiskey or non-bourbon category, I guess, is going to be what I would consider to be travel stuff. Things that you're going to use, and I guess I probably could have left the snoot glass in this, but things that you might want to carry with you when you're going somewhere. I don't have this yet, but I saw where Aged in Ore put out a sample bottle flight, and they meet TSA requirements. So they're silicone-wrapped glass, enough space. Thanks, Bourbon Lens. Yeah, they are. I tried to get them a little festive for the season at this time of the year. But yeah, so back to this. We're covering travel, different gift ideas, things that somebody might be interested in purchasing for somebody. This Aged in Ore sample bottle flight that they have, there's 4 bottles. It's giving you the ability to be able to take with you on an airplane flight something that you might want to consume when you get to wherever you're going. I know that's I've got a trip coming up to North Carolina at the end of the month. It's not super encouraging what might be available to me whenever I get to the location that I'm heading to. And I might want to take a few things with me. And so my choice right now is to put it in a Boston Round and take it with me. Or buy, the mini bottles at at a liquor store, at the airport, or wherever, or taking my chances when I get there. So those Aged in Ore sample bottle flights seem like they're probably the way to go. I would love to see one in person, kind of feel it, but given the fact that I'm right now at 3 or 4 different Aged in Ore products that I really like, I think that they're probably going to be top notch as well. Zachary Chubb's double-walled stainless 3-ounce flasks, perfect for travel booze. I'm absolutely going to bookmark that. Thank you for that. I'll put that on. Maybe I'll put that on next year's list since I didn't have it beforehand. But then if you're not flying, if you're just going somewhere, if you're going on a short trip, if you're going to a wedding, if you're going whatever, flasks. You already touched it. Flasks are a way to go. We're looking for a gift, so we want something that's got a little bit of pizzazz to it. Rag Proper makes probably one of the nicest feeling flasks that exist on the market. It's actual glass on the inside, and it has a true leather wrap. You can get one with silicone as well. You've got a metal lid and a plastic lid. It comes with a small funnel. They come in a couple of different sizes. I have 2 different sizes depending upon where I'm going, how long I'm going to be there, and if I think somebody's going to try to mooch whiskey off me while I'm there. But these are easy to carry with me. We went with the kids to Garden of the Gods, which is in southern Illinois. Did a little quick hike. We were going to have a picnic lunch, and I took the small flask with a little bit of whiskey in it, so we sit down and have it. I have it with me to enjoy. It's a fantastic thing to have on hand, and I'm gonna have to scoot away for just a second. Because I left one of the things that I wanted to talk about. So another type of flask. I have one of these from Aged in Ore as well, but there are bigger flasks, like if you're going camping type flasks, things that are going to hold a bit more to them. So there's this company called High Camp that makes a flask that it looks like this. This one is all copper. I actually won this one from my friends over at the Bourbon Junkies, and it's got a magnetic top on it, which is super handy, at least in my experience. And it'll hold a considerable amount more than one of the glass flasks will, but being non-glass, it also gives you the ability to stuff it in a backpack and not worry about it getting shattered while you're traveling, while you're hiking, while you're doing whatever it is, traveling with family. I have another one over here from H&R. It is glass inside of metal, and it is very nice feeling, but I would be a little bit more reluctant to stick that in like a backpack type thing. Anywhere it might get smashed or potentially crushed. So those are I think we took, about half an hour to talk about non-whiskey related Christmas gifts for someone in your life, or holiday gifts, sorry. Yeah, I have to catch myself. Non-whiskey, but whiskey adjacent holiday gifts for people in your life that you don't necessarily know. But then you come into, I don't want to buy any of that. I want to buy them a bottle. I want to get them something that is unique and special. And I generally get, what bottle should I get for my friend? What bottle should I get for my dad, for my boss, for whatever? And it's a terrible question to ask me, because I don't know your friend most of the time. I don't know your friend, and I don't know how well you know your friend. And so I usually try to come back with, like, what do they like to drink? What do they like to eat? How serious are they about whiskey? And what is the price range you're looking at? And if you can't answer any of those, then you probably need to go back in the last half hour and pick one of those other things. But if you can't answer those questions, it helps you get a little bit further down the road of understanding what it is that you might want to buy for somebody. If you know what they like to drink already, then you probably have some good ideas, and I can probably point you in a different direction. If you have an idea of, are they a foodie? Are they not a foodie? Are they really that serious about whiskey or not? Because there are some bottles that you can get inexpensively that if the person is only sort of into whiskey, they won't understand what that means, right? Like, so Heaven Hill makes a green label bottle that is fairly available in the state of Kentucky, but not in a lot of other places, and it's pretty widely sought after. I've got a couple extra of them floating around here that I like to do for giveaways, because people outside of the state of Kentucky don't see them. But if the person doesn't really know whiskey, if they're not really into it, they're just now getting into whiskey and they haven't come across it yet, they're going to look at the gift, they're going to hop out there, they're going to see that it only costs like $16, and they're going to be like, oh, what a cheapskate gift, and they may not even like what's in there. But what the reality is that if you've done some research, you know that that's like it's a pretty solid hitter bottle for a really cheap price, and it's something that not everybody can get a hold of. So that's why, like, sort of assessing their seriousness. Like, if they tell you their favorite whiskey in the whole world is Blanton's and they don't have a number 2, they're probably not super into it. There's nothing wrong with having Blanton's as your favorite, but a person who's into whiskey is also probably going to have another one, another backup, another idea. But if you can't answer any of those questions, and you're still not interested in buying one of those things, we're going to come back to, what should you buy? And so we can always answer how much are you willing to spend? How much does this person kind of fall to in your life? And like I said, so if you're in that, like, and I've broken it up into 3 bands. It's like $0 to $30, $30 to $50, and then $50 to $80. And anything above $80, you're taking a shot as to whether or not, number one, you know what you're buying, and I would hope if you're shooting above 80, you already know some things that they do like. Something you've been to the bar with them, you've seen them drink something, you've heard them talk about it, whatever. Absolutely. Yep. So you're exactly right. The gifting a bottle of Green Label any day is fantastic, and it's sort of the same thing with, say, the Special Reserve Weller, which is widely available in Ohio. Giving that gift in Ohio doesn't mean anything, but giving that gift in Kentucky absolutely does. Even though it's a inexpensive bottle of whiskey, you can't find it. So it took somebody, it had somebody taking some effort to be able to get to that. But back to the first cost band, $0 to $30. And $0 to $30, there's a lot of really good quality whiskeys, in my personal opinion. And my personal opinion means nothing unless you happen to be here. But there's a series of whiskeys that I think that you can go out and you can purchase, and you're going to be able to get a good quality whiskey for somebody in that price range. And so I'm going to start, like I said, with that Heaven Hill Green label. If you're in the state of Kentucky and you can find it, you're going to get it for hopefully sub $20. Right? That's going to be a good price for it. Then if that's not an option, or you can't happen to find it, I'm always going to tell somebody to go with an Evan Williams bottled and bond. I got to spend some time with my friend, Single Barrel Snob Timothy. He was doing what he was calling Snob School some time back, where we did just a tasting on Evan Williams bottled and bond, and everybody on that call likely had several, if not in the 10s or 20s, of bottles that are higher quality, higher price, higher whatever than that. But we took an hour and a half one day and just sort of broke down that bottle, because it is a really good quality bottle for the price range that it is. And then one of my quintessential favorites for sure is going to be Buffalo Trace. Any Buffalo Trace, and if you can sneak in a Buffalo Trace single barrel in that sub 30, absolutely do that. I've never had a bad one. I've had some that are great and some that are mediocre, but Buffalo Trace is always one that you can feel safe recommending to anybody. And then moving down the list into the $31 to $50 range, or $30 to $50 range, any Maker's Cask Strength. Maker's Cask Strength is always going to be something, and everybody knows what it is, what Maker's is, but not necessarily everybody is going to have a Cask Strength on their shelf. If they're not a Cask Strength drinker, it's something. If they're not a Cask Strength drinker, they're probably using ice, or they're probably mixing a drink at some degree, and this will hold up to that very well. It's widely available in a lot of places, and it's pretty good quality. If you can come across a rare breed, whether it be rye or bourbon, under $50, absolutely snatch those up. And in that same vein, Russells. Any Russells that you come across that is under $50, absolutely makes this list. And I realize those last two that I sort of tossed in there are both Wild Turkey products, but you can't say enough about them. And depending on where you are in the country, sometimes you find them at $45, and sometimes you find them at $55. But I would make that extra $5 jump to get there. And then the next cost band is that $50 to $80 range. And so we ran, the first round was a $30 range, the second round was $20 range, and this last one's $30 as well. Doubling back, Maker's Mark wood finishing series, any of those that are between 50 and 80 are usually worth picking up. Any Maker's Mark single barrel private selects, I think is what they actually call them, absolutely. Most, if you spend time in a liquor store and you get to know the people and they seem to know something about whiskey, if they have any store picks, it's probably going to be okay to snag one of those up. Heaven's Door, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, because I actually went out and looked at I think it was 10 or 12 different online lists of the best bottles of whiskey you can buy for somebody for Christmas, and kind of compiled them. And one of the surprising ones that showed up was that one. And then Uncle Nearest, I think sits right at that $55, $56 range. I think that it is one that anybody should have on their shelf. It says a couple things, at least the bottle says a couple things to me. Is number one, it's a good quality product. It's a product with a fantastic backstory. I'll say that I think Fawn Weaver is probably the best product storyteller in the whiskey business right now. Nobody's doing it better than her. They're building a great brand. It's a bottle that carries a lot of weight, but also carries a lot of good causes with it as well. There's a lot of money that's going into a lot of positive benefit for it, and it doesn't hurt that it's a fantastic whiskey in there. And then one that you might sneak in, and I don't know if it'll hit in that $80 range. I can't remember what last year's cost, but if you're kind of dipping right over top of that, Barrel Bourbon in Lexington, they do a New Year bottle every year. It's usually released in December sometime. It'll be the New Year 2022. It's a great Christmas present, because then you have it to ring in the new year while everybody else is sipping champagne. The whiskey nerds can geek out with a little bit of Barrel Bourbon, and most of the things that they're doing, they're masters at blending. So most of the things that they do are really, really good. And so those are, like I said, those are three sort of ranges where you can pick up some things and make some decisions on which one to buy. But there's this other thing that you can take into consideration when it comes to buying a bottle for someone is, where do you live in the world? We live in a wonderful time right now where I can't remember the exact numbers, but I'm going to ballpark some numbers. 15 years ago, there were maybe a couple of hundred craft distillers across the United States, and as of right now, there's somewhere near 2,000 craft distillers across the United States, which means you're probably relatively close to a craft distillery, somebody who is making whiskey on a regular basis of some type. Some of them may be making single malt, some of them may be making rye or just standard whiskey, they may be making aged moonshine, something along that lines. But I would encourage you, if you know a person who is a whiskey collector, and maybe they're not geographically near you, if you've got family on the other side of the country, anywhere else new, pick up something from a semi-local distiller and send that to them. One of my favorite bottles right now, I have a bottle of Southern bourbon from Georgia. It's I think it's 13th Colony Distilling, maybe, is the name of the company. We were down there on vacation, and when I go on vacation, I try to look up what is something that I can buy in this state that I can't find at home. And I happened across that and a few other bottles that were all really, really good. But they make great gifts because it's something that I can't purchase here. It's something that is unique, and it is something that is good. That's good. It really is good. I had a friend that was traveling out to Arizona, one of my coworkers, a guy that I consider relatively close, and he said, "Hey, while I'm out there, do you want me to look for anything?" Because once people know you're into whiskey, they start saying, "Hey, what are you looking for? What do you want to know about?" Good friends will help you out. And I said, "Hey, man, you're out in Arizona. Where I think he was going to be in Phoenix." I was like, "You find something from a local distiller and bring it back to me, and I'll put that on my shelf up next to some of the highest priced bottles, because number one, it's a gift, and number two, it's something that I can't get here." And he brought back some Park Rye from Arizona Distilling Company, and I still haven't opened it yet. It's sitting over there on the shelf. But I'll cherish the bottle. It's probably going to be good. All of the things that I've read about it have been really good. So those are, like I said, those are all of the things that sort of piqued my curiosity on this. What I will say, so this is the thing that was somewhat unique to me. Let me see if I can go find this. Like I said, I went out and I did my own little survey, so to speak, right? Yes, that is the one bottle that looks... Hold on, I'll show you. Sorry. Yeah, Bourbon Lens, it absolutely is the one that looks like the birthday bourbon. It looks like this right here. It was relatively inexpensive, and I think it's pretty dang good for what we bought there. And they had a rye too, and I regret not buying that. There was, it's one of those where, I came home from vacation with, I don't know, 9 or 10 bottles of whiskey, and only intended to come home with 5 or 6. So I'm trying to keep everybody happy. But I did my own survey. I went out, like I said, and did a list of a gift list from a bunch of different sources. I used Gear Patrol, Drizzly, Men's Health, Courier Journal had a list, Esquire had a list, I already said Gear Patrol. Esquire had a list, and one other, I can't remember what it was. And the thing, it sort of was in the first set of bottles that we talked about. The most widely suggested bottles were always going to be Maker's Mark. They've done a fantastic job of marketing over the last 40, 50, 60 years of being a premium bourbon without being what would be considered premium priced right now. If you have the ability to sneak in and get somebody a Whiskey Drop subscription, absolutely do that. But, of the ones that I did, there were, 4 different times that Maker's Mark specifically was represented across this list of about 10 or 12 different websites. The one that surprised me the most, and I've already recommended them, was Uncle Nearest. Uncle Nearest was in Drizzly, Liquor.com, and Esquire's list of bottles that you should buy. And they echoed some of the same sentiments. And then another Another one that was a little bit, I guess it's not as surprising as it should be, maybe, is Jack Daniels. And they weren't necessarily talking about your old number 7 Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels has released in the last couple of weeks, or last couple of weeks, month, whatever, their Jack Daniels 10-year. They also have the Coy Hill that's sitting out there, and then there's the Sinatra edition. And so those get different mentions across the different lists. But it's super nice to think about those, to, give those sort of a nod. And then what I found really surprising from these lists is there was a mention of Starward, which is an Australian single malt that you've heard me talk about on before. I've had the privilege of being on a Zoom tasting with Jake from Key in the Lake podcast and did some Starward single malt single barrels, and I have a few of them that I actually was able to purchase and keep on hand. I think they're fantastic, but the fact that they're sneaking into a list, being an Australian single malt with a limited footprint in the United States, I think indicates a lot about the future of that brand. And so if you're looking for something that is not specifically bourbon, maybe you've got a Scotch drinker that you're trying to buy something for, but you just cannot pull the trigger on a Scotch. See if you can find that. See if you can find some Starward somewhere. And then one that was really, really surprising is I came across Mr. Black, the espresso liqueur, which I talked about literally just last week on this episode, on this live stream. And it was specifically, I was talking about the one that was aged in Whistle Pig barrels, but just generically the existence of that espresso liqueur. And I think, that's part of cocktail culture. That's part of having something that people are going to make some unique things out of. And over the last week, since I did the last stream, I've been thinking about ways that I can consume this. And we're about to be in the cold part of the year, so I can, toss it in and make I may be able to take, I've been thinking about taking some of the espresso liqueur and mixing that with some of the Jim Beam bourbon cream to make my own coffee whiskey type drink. Then I started thinking about making tiramisu, and instead of using espresso in the bottom, I'm actually using espresso liqueur and making it like boozy tiramisu. So that may be a thing that I'm going to end up doing. But back to the list. Another surprising revelation is the existence on 2 separate lists of some pretty widely slammed on Tennessee whiskeys. The Dickel 8-year bourbon showed up in a number of places, which maybe given its newness is not incredibly surprising. But then there was also Sweetens Cove. And Sweetens Cove has been panned by most social media icons as being a terrible value for its price. Not that it's a terrible whiskey, but it's a terrible value considering its price, because it is significantly more pricey. I'll reserve my own comments on it because I've not had it myself. It's one of those things that I intend to have at some point in time, but I've yet to be in a bar that has it. And given the reviews for it, it has definitely become something that I'm going to try before I buy. But it was there, like it existed, and then a Dickel 8-year bourbon, which I have one, and I think it's perfectly fine. I personally don't have any issues with Dickel whiskey, but a lot of people absolutely do. They absolutely do not enjoy what Dickel does. And then there were some that are worth mention, but their only concern is that they're hard to find or pricey. A. Smith Bowman's cask strengths or barrel craft spirits, anything, or Booker's. Booker's can be available, but it can also be pricey. And then there's the Charter Oak that's supposed to be coming out. Odds you're not going to see that anywhere. And then Michter's barrel strength rye, like we're all just seeing that floating around on a regular basis, anywhere. And then like I said, there were standards that you expect to see everywhere. Woodford Reserve was on the list, and that's a safe bottle that you can buy for any human being that drinks whiskey, but you don't know what they do, and they'll either mix it or do something else with it. And then there were 2 or 3 other American single malts that made lists, various different lists, and that's, like I said, that's encouraging. Kind of going back to the beginning of this particular episode, we're getting ready to get a definition of what does American single malt whiskey actually mean. So maybe that helps that market even more. And then the last bit that I have is, we're running longer than I have in a very long time, and I'm okay with that. The last one I have is gifting clout bottles. Clout bottles are, you're trying to mark either yourself or the person as someone of, I'm going to use the term very loosely, means. You're going to buy something that no matter who is coming across it, they're going to be like, oh, that's a special bottle. That's absolutely wood for double oaked in the $50 range. Only reason I left that one off is that I feel like most purchasers of whiskey already know that value exists. So you're probably not listening to this list without already knowing about it. So I'm trying to toss out different things. But gifting clout bottles, you're trying to make a statement. You're trying to buy something for a boss. You're trying to impress somebody. You're trying to impress a girlfriend's dad, whatever. And these are going to be tougher to find. You're going to have to shell out some money to get there. So Michter's Barrel Strength Toasted. Michter's 10-year. Midwinter Night Dram. Obviously, Weller 12 is always there. Anybody that wants to can absolutely bag on Weller 12 as a bottle that is way inflated in price, and I agree. Anything above $100 is inflated for that. But I remember when Weller first started inflating in price. Weller 12 first started inflating in price, and it went from $30 to $60, and I patently refused to purchase any bottles at $60. I said, that is ridiculous. There's no way I would ever pay $60 for it. And I kicked myself for not cashing out my 401k and buying every bottle I can at $60, because if I still had those right now, I'd be retired at this point. But I think that it is a bottle that is worth up to $100. But just finding it and being able to buy it, it becomes a statement in and of itself. Anything Old Carter, anything Wild Turkey Master's Keep, and then more recently in the news is Blue Run, whether it be their rye or their bourbons. They're pricey, but for all accounts, they're good. Whether, I've seen, read, listened to, I listen to my friends over, I say my friends, people that I listen to on podcasts, listen to Perry over at This Is My Bourbon podcast talk about, it's a great bottle up until you start taking into account the cost of it. You're paying a couple $100 for a 4-year bourbon or a 4-year rye, and that's sort of maddening. But at the end of the day, if you remove age statements from every bottle and you taste it and then you put the price up against it, does it match out? And for a lot of people, for Blue Run, it does. But we're talking about, you're trying to gift a bottle here that says something, that, it has some degree of impact. And it says, hey, I am paying attention to what's happening in whiskey right now. Buying an Old Carter says that I was paying attention, 6 months to a year ago. Weller 12, I just, that's what's been going on forever. Same thing with Midwinter Night's Dram. And then if you can ever find Michter's Toasted, that just says I was hunting hard. You're able to say a few things with those particular selections. So, that's all I've got for tonight. These are the gift ideas that I have. Most of this will end up in show notes somewhere. We'll be able to put links in if you want to go buy any of these. I may toss in a couple others that I didn't directly talk about, like the Aged in Ore glass flask, glass travel flask, whatever it's called. I can't remember. Any of those things. But I appreciate anybody that happened to join me tonight. I'm going to kill it here and probably hop over. I know there's a couple of other people that are live streaming right now. They're likely doing a much better job than I am. I appreciate everybody for being here. We've gained a few more followers on YouTube specifically. Podcast downloads are staying relatively even, picking up quite a few downloads per week. I super appreciate the support. Thank you for being here tonight, Bourbon Lens, and I'm looking forward to your event tomorrow night. One way or the other, it's going to be a fantastic time. I've got my own bottles of Broken Barrel over here as well. But I appreciate everybody for being here, and I will see you guys. I think I'm going to shoot for Tuesday of next week, and we're probably just going to talk about Wild Turkey because it's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. What else are you going to talk about the day before Thanksgiving break for most folks at that point in time? So appreciate everybody for being here. I'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening to the Embellish Podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe. Check out our website at embellishpod.com and follow us on social media at Instagram and Twitter to keep up with what we have going on. If you have an idea about a story we should talk about, send it to us at embellishpod@gmail.com. And remember, whether famous or infamous, a good story mixed with a touch of embellishment makes the food you ate, the drink you drank, and the places you visited just a little more memorable.